Top of the morning, top of the morning. It is a Caitlin Clark Indiana Fever game day. And you know what that means. Come on, guys. Say it with me. Say it with me. Clark Show, baby. We are about to be in for an all-out Clark Show. She's about to put on another dominant MVP performance versus the Toronto Tempo, who haven't been able to win a game since the middle of July. This team is garbage, and we need to make sure that we take out the trash. Caitlin Clark, fresh off the Player of the Week, about to win the MVP. Indiana Fever going on a run. They just destroyed Miss Mebound. I can't make a layup that vomit all over herself.
The locker room.
If there was ever a moment for the Indiana Fever to trust Caitlin Clark completely, this may be it. The Fever are heading into their matchup with Toronto carrying serious momentum. But the biggest story surrounding the team is not simply the opponent. It is the growing debate over how much freedom Clark should have when the game is on the line. Clark enters this stretch of the season playing with the confidence of a superstar who believes she can control the entire flow of a game. According to the source material, she has been averaging 26 points, 10 assists, and 4 rebounds across her previous 4 outings while coming off a Player of the Week honor. Those numbers have only intensified the conversation around her MVP candidacy. But there is another side to the story. The Fever have occasionally appeared caught between 2 different offensive philosophies. One approach emphasizes structured half-court sets and making sure secondary scorers remain involved. The other is much simpler. Put the ball in Clark's hands, let her read the defense, and allow her creativity to determine what happens next. That difference became especially noticeable during the Fever's recent game against Atlanta. The source describes a fourth quarter in which Clark was less involved while Kelsey Mitchell received repeated opportunities as Indiana attempted to push Mitchell toward a 20-point mark. Whether that was the actual intention behind every possession is difficult to establish from the material alone, but the criticism is clear. The Fever should not sacrifice offensive rhythm simply to chase individual milestones. And that is where the Clark question becomes so fascinating. When Clark has the ball, defenders have to make difficult decisions. Give her space, and she can threaten from deep. Press too high, and she can attack the lane. Collapse toward her, and suddenly cutters and shooters have opportunities elsewhere. Her greatest value is not simply the points she scores. It is the pressure she creates across the entire defense. That is why the idea of turning her into a decoy for long stretches has frustrated some observers. The source repeatedly argues that Indiana's offense works best when Clark is allowed to operate as the primary decision-maker. In transition, especially, she can immediately identify mismatches before a defense has time to get organized. A slower, more complicated system can take away some of that advantage. At the same time, this does not mean every Fever possession should become a Clark isolation. Basketball does not work that way. Mitchell remains an important scorer. Aliyah Boston remains a major part of the frontcourt. And Indiana needs contributions from its entire rotation if it wants to make a serious postseason run. The real issue is balance. Clark needs freedom, but her teammates need to remain connected to the offense. Mitchell needs scoring opportunities, but those opportunities should come naturally from defensive attention created by Clark. Boston needs to convert the easy opportunities that Clark creates around the basket, because when those pieces work together, the Fever become far more difficult to defend. And that brings us to Toronto. On paper, this matchup appears to favor Indiana. The source describes Toronto as entering the game on a 10-game losing streak, with its last reported victory coming on July the 12th. That makes this a game the Fever should control. But that is exactly why it could become dangerous. A team struggling badly can sometimes play with nothing to lose. If Indiana starts slowly, misses open shots, or allows Toronto to gain confidence, the game can become much closer than expected. And there is one player the Fever absolutely cannot afford to ignore: Marina Mabrey. The source highlights Mabrey as Toronto's biggest offensive threat, and points to her ability to explode for huge scoring performances, including a reported 53-point game in the past. That means Indiana cannot simply assume the losing streak will continue. The Fever need to establish control early, and the easiest way to do that may be the same thing that has fueled their recent momentum: let Caitlin Clark dictate the tempo. The question is whether Indiana's coaching staff will trust that formula when the pressure arrives. Because at this stage of the season, every decision matters, and Clark's MVP campaign is becoming impossible to ignore. The Toronto matchup is more than another game on the schedule for the Indiana Fever. It is another opportunity to find out exactly what this team wants to become. The Fever have built momentum, and Caitlin Clark is at the center of nearly everything they do well. But the biggest challenge may not come from Toronto's defense. It may come from Indiana itself. Can the Fever keep their offense simple? Can they trust their best playmaker? And can they avoid overthinking a game they should be capable of controlling? Those questions have become increasingly important as Clark continues to produce at an elite level. The source material argues that Indiana's offense becomes most dangerous when Clark is allowed to play instinctively. That means pushing the ball, tacking downhill, pulling up from deep when defenders go under screens, and finding teammates before defensive rotations can recover. It sounds simple, but simple does not always mean easy. A coaching staff has to manage 5 players on the floor, substitutions, matchups, defensive assignments, foul trouble, and the rhythm of individual players. There are legitimate reasons for structured offensive sets. The problem comes when structure becomes hesitation. Clark is at her best when she can make decisions in real time. If the defense gives her an opening, she needs to attack it. If a teammate cuts behind a defender, she needs the freedom to make that pass. If the defense collapses, she needs to recognize the open shooter immediately. That kind of basketball cannot always be drawn up perfectly on a whiteboard. It has to be read. And Clark has repeatedly shown an ability to read the floor at an extraordinary level. But there is another problem the Fever need to solve: finishing. The source is highly critical of Indiana's missed layups and easy opportunities around the basket. Regardless of the harsh language used in the original material, the basketball point is important. A point guard can create open looks, but the teammates still have to finish them. Every missed layup is potentially an assist that never reaches the box score. For Clark, that matters. Her passing creates opportunities that can change a game, but if Indiana repeatedly misses those chances, the team loses the benefit of one of Clark's greatest strengths. That is why Aliyah Boston's finishing could become a major storyline. Boston does not need to score every possession. She does not need to force anything. But when Clark creates an open look near the rim, Indiana needs that opportunity converted. The same applies to the rest of the roster. Run the floor, cut hard, keep your hands ready, and when Clark delivers the pass, finish the play. That formula could become especially important against Toronto because the Fever have an opportunity to control the pace from the opening tip. A fast start could immediately put pressure on a team already dealing with a long losing streak. If Indiana turns defense into transition opportunities, Clark becomes even more dangerous. Toronto would be forced to sprint back repeatedly, and that can create defensive breakdowns. But there is a warning. Mabry cannot be allowed to get comfortable. The source describes her as the kind of scorer who can completely change a game if she catches fire. That means Indiana cannot treat the opponent's record as an excuse to relax. A 10-game losing streak does not mean a team cannot win one game. It only means it has struggled over time. And that is why the Fever need discipline. Clark can lead the offense, but Indiana also has to defend. Mitchell can provide scoring, but the ball cannot stop moving. Boston can dominate inside, but the easy opportunities have to be finished. Every piece matters. The coaching debate also extends beyond Clark and Mitchell. The source raises concerns about the inconsistent usage of Lexi Hull, suggesting that short bursts of playing time followed by long stretches on the bench can affect a role player's confidence. Again, the larger issue is consistency. Players need to know their role. They need to know when they are coming into the game, and they need to understand what the team expects from them. That becomes even more important during a playoff push. The Fever cannot afford to enter games without a clear identity. Their identity should be aggressive, fast, creative, and centered around Clark's ability to control the game. But that identity only works if everyone buys into it. And now, with Toronto waiting, Indiana has a chance to prove exactly how dangerous that formula can be. There is a fascinating tension surrounding the Indiana Fever right now. On one side, you have Caitlin Clark, a superstar playing with enormous confidence and building a serious MVP argument. On the other side, you have a team that is still trying to figure out exactly how to maximize that superstar without making the offense predictable. That tension could define the next stage of Indiana's season. Clark has already demonstrated that she can take over games. The source describes her recent stretch as one of the strongest periods of her season, highlighted by a Player of the Week honor and impressive all-around production. But MVP conversations are not decided by reputation alone. They are built through moments, big games, big stretches, and performances that force everyone watching to admit that something special is happening. The Toronto matchup presents another opportunity. The opponent may be struggling, but that does not make the game meaningless. In fact, these are the games contenders are expected to win. If Indiana dominates from the opening minutes, controls the tempo, protects the basketball, and gets contributions across the roster, the Fever can send another message. But if they allow Toronto to hang around, suddenly the pressure changes. That is where coaching decisions become important. If the offense becomes stagnant, will Indiana return to Clark? If Toronto sends extra defenders toward her, will the Fever trust the other players to punish those rotations? If Mitchell gets hot, will the team continue feeding her naturally without forcing the issue? And if Boston gets opportunities inside, will she convert them? These are the details that separate a good team from a dangerous one. The source repeatedly returns to one central idea: Indiana should not overcomplicate what already works. Clark does not need to be turned into something she is not. She does not need every possession designed specifically for her. She simply needs enough freedom to make the right decision. That distinction is critical. Giving Clark freedom does not mean ignoring the coaching staff. It means trusting the player who sees the game developing in front of her. If Clark sees a lane, attack. If she sees a shooter, pass. If the defense gives her space, shoot. If the defense traps her, move the ball. That is the essence of being a lead playmaker. And when the Fever operate that way, the entire roster benefits. Mitchell can attack closeouts. Boston can roll to the basket. Role players can cut into open space. And Indiana can play with the pace that has made Clark so dangerous. The biggest threat to that rhythm may be complacency. Toronto's losing streak could tempt Indiana to relax. That cannot happen. Mabry is capable of creating scoring explosions, and one hot shooting night can erase a team's previous 10 losses in a matter of minutes. Indiana needs to make her work, defend her aggressively, force difficult shots, make other players beat them. Then, on the offensive end, the Fever need to attack immediately. Clark should be looking for mismatches from the opening possession. Mitchell should be ready to punish defenders who overcome it to Clark. Boston should run hard and finish around the rim. And the bench needs to provide energy instead of waiting for the stars to do everything. Because the Fever are not simply trying to win one game. They are building towards something bigger. The source portrays Indiana as a team that has recently collected 3 statement victories against strong postseason competition. Whether every detail of that characterization holds up independently, the broader point is unmistakable. Expectations around this team are rising, and with those expectations comes pressure. Clark is no longer simply a young star learning the league. She is being discussed as an MVP-level player. That changes everything. Every missed opportunity becomes a talking point. Every coaching decision becomes scrutinized. Every fourth-quarter possession becomes evidence in a larger argument about what Indiana should be doing. But Clark does not need to silence every critic in one night. She simply needs to continue playing her game. The Fever need to trust the talent they have. And Stephanie White and her staff need to find the balance between structure and freedom. Because when you have a player capable of seeing passing angles before they develop, stretching defenses from deep, and controlling the tempo of a game, the goal should not be to make her smaller. The goal should be to make the entire team better because she is on the floor. That is the real test waiting against Toronto. Not whether Caitlin Clark can dominate. We already know she can. The real question is whether Indiana can build an offense that consistently allows that dominance to lift everyone around her. If the answer is yes, the Fever could be entering a very dangerous stretch of the season. And if Clark continues playing at this level, the MVP conversation may soon become impossible to ignore. The goal should be to make the entire team better because she is on the floor. That is the real test waiting against Toronto. Not whether Caitlin Clark can dominate. We already know she can. The real question is whether Indiana can build an offense that consistently allows that dominance to lift everyone around her. If the answer is yes, the Fever could be entering a very dangerous stretch of the season. And if Clark continues playing at this level, the MVP conversation may soon become impossible to ignore.